Coming up in this set of daily races, we head over to Suzuka East Course for a 1-make cup race featuring the Honda N1 RS. Daily race B heads us over to Brands Hatch Indy, where things are going to get a little bit more on the dirty side, and then we head over to daily race C, which takes place at Big Willow, of course, at Willow Springs International Raceway, and you can bet things are going to get a little bit chaotic there this week. But before we get into this video, I'm trying to push this channel to 60,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and we are so incredibly close to it. So if you do enjoy this kind of content and want to stay up to date with everything Gran Turismo related, then feel free to leave a like, subscribe and turn your notifications on. Anyway, let's get to it. So kicking the week off as always, and honestly the single race that actually brought me back to the daily races for the first time in forever, is Suzuka Circuit East Course with a specified 1-make race. Now, as you can see for the finer details, it's a 5-lap sprint race with a total of 12 cars. It is a grid start type with no false start on, 1 times fuel and 1 times tyre. You must use the comfort mediums for this one, wide body is prohibited, and nitrous and overtake is prohibited. We finally have a 1-make race for the Honda N1 RS, which is very much a cup car that is used over in Japan. Car restrictions is mid-speed BOP, garage and event specified car, and your car settings are specified. Driver rating is not affected, but safety rating is. Now, as we can see for the rest of it, mechanical damage is set to light, there are no minimum pit stops and normal track limits. As for the penalties, well, shortcut penalty is light, wall collision is off, other car collision is on, and the same with pit lane cutting. So here we are, daily race A lined up on the grid for this Honda N1 Cup race. We're starting P3, definitely not the best qualifying lap, I really didn't get many laps in at all, but we do manage to make a decent enough start to put ourselves in a position where we could actually move up into turn 1. However, there is no way I'm going to be diving down the inside here. Of course, these cars are incredibly slow, and the last thing I want to do is cause an accident. So I'm going to kind of back out and just sit back, but unfortunately in doing so, I'll leave the door wide open for Bally here, who's going to get it down the inside and move himself into the podium positions. Now, this race would be extremely close up front, apart from Kiwi, the leader, who managed to get a really nice gap over the rest of the field, thanks to everyone from P2 onwards just battling constantly throughout this little race. Now we begin lap 2 with a side-by-side battle with Bally. Of course, we're trying to get back into that podium position. Unfortunately, he did get the better run, so I'm just going to back out of it, tuck him behind and wait my turn. And well, thankfully, being patient would pay off as we went into lap 3. As you can see, P2 and P3 battling away there, and unfortunately, Bally's just going to overcook it and unfortunately run wide. But that is going to allow us back into the podium positions and take back P3 where we began. He's also then going to lose out another position there in P4. Now, in terms of the gap to P2, we were closing it up in the closing stages of this race, really finding pace here, and honestly P2 just decided to back us up to the rest of the field, and it would end up being a massive Honda N1 RS train here. As we go through all of the S's, it was extremely close, and well, I was just looking for that opening to try and get P2 into the final few corners, and I definitely felt that the move was on if we could just get the momentum. But P2 honestly defended incredibly cleanly and incredibly well, putting the car exactly where it needed to be to stop me pouncing for that P2 position. And in the end, unfortunately, we would have to settle for P3, exactly where we started. So we're not gaining any positions, but we're certainly not losing any either, as of course the train of Hondas crossed the line. Overall, an incredibly short and sweet daily race A. On to daily race B then, and it continues the trend of chaotic short track racing, as this one takes place at Brands Hatch Indy Circuit, featuring the Group 4 category of car. So let's go ahead and take a look at the finer details then. This is a 10-lap sprint race with a total of 16 cars. It is set to a rolling start type, 1 times fuel and 1 times tyre. Usable tyres and types here are racing hards, intermediates and wets, but of course you'll only need the racing hards here. Category is Group 4, wide body prohibited, and the exact same with nitrous and overtake. BOP is set to low speed, and you must use a garage or event specified car. car settings are partially allowed with brake balance. Now of course, as usual, we see both driver rating and safety rating affected. Mechanical damage is set to light, there are no minimum pit stops, and the track limits are normal. Shortcut penalty is set to light, wall collision is off, other car collision is on, and the exact same with pit lane cutting. So here we are then, lined up in 5th place. Again, not the best qualifying here for Daily Race B. Now this being taking place at Brands Hatch Indy, it does lend itself to being absolute carnage. Now the majority of the carnage would actually revolve around myself in P5 and the driver up in front of us in P4. And admittedly, I think both of us kind of lost our heads a little bit during this race, but it does have a happy ending, which I'll kind of show you at the end of this race. So let's begin then. We get off to a decent enough start. Admittedly though, I'm being incredibly cautious to begin with. With this being such a short track, I want to try and avoid as many accidents as possible. And typically when you see these kind of tracks appear and it's a very early race on in the week, you see a lot of accidents typically happen towards the front, middle, and well, even the rear of course. So really all I'm doing in these early stages is just monitoring what's going on in front, and hopefully we can sort of take advantage and gain a few positions there, but that wouldn't be the case. And honestly, my early pace was incredibly rusty. A lot of little mistakes just creeping in, not getting in the right gear for certain corners, and for some reason I just felt completely off it, and it wouldn't improve a few laps later as we managed to run it wide, dip it on the grass, and almost lose a position into P6 there, just narrowly keeping myself in front of that Ferrari. Now thankfully we did get those mistakes out the way and done with early on, and all of a sudden the pace began to creep in around lap 4, 5 and 6 to the point where we became the outright fastest car on track. I was pulling away from the Ferrari behind us, I was gaining on the car in front and maintaining my overall gap to the front running vehicles. So things were actually starting to look up here. As you can see, purple sectors all around, and we will take the outright fastest lap, at least at this portion in time of the race. Now the mistakes were creeping in for the Citroen. As you can see, we're going to try and take advantage of that here, getting in the slipstream and pulling out to the outside to try and get that cut back into turn 1. Now unfortunately we couldn't keep the momentum going. Very good defending there by the Citroen, and that does lose me that momentum to get that cutback done into the right hander just up the hill. As you can see though, more mistakes would creep in, and that did allow us to maintain the consistently tiny gap to the car in front. It was all about just waiting for the opportunity to get this move done. It's very easy to defend here at Brands Hatch Indy, and the Citroen was actually doing a great job. Unfortunately though, all of that great defending would be washed away as the Citroen would resort to dirty driving tactics, trying to completely ram us and spin us off the road. Thankfully we do keep the Genesis going, but we lost a ton of time, a ton of momentum, and did take damage from that. And well, at this point I began to see red. Incredibly frustrated going into the final lap. I know he's going to try again if I try and make the move, especially this deep into the race. We had a lot more pace than the Citroen in front. It was all about waiting for an opening. So I decided to just stand my ground this time, and yes, admittedly I was seeing red, I was frustrated, and I don't condone this kind of driving, but I just kept the car on the inside line and let him drive himself into me to the point where it pushed him off wide and ended up resetting him. As you can see here, we had the momentum, we moved the car over to the left, and I just decided that I'm not going to move and I'll let him drive into me this time and see how that goes. And well, as you can see, we didn't get a penalty, we did take P4, and the Citroen got reset, moving itself all the way down to I believe about P7 or P8 in the end. Thankfully there was a happy ending, there was apologies all around basically, and we just kind of got on with it. Again, no hard feelings between us both, and admittedly I did lose my cool there at the end, but again, everybody has their limits. Now of course that leaves us with the final race of the week, Daily Race C, Willow Springs International Raceway on Big Willow, featuring Group 3 vehicles. So let's go ahead and take a look at the finer details here then. 15 laps, a total of 16 cars, a rolling start time, times 2 fuel, and times 4 tyres. The usable tyres are racing hards, intermediates and wets, but of course you'll only need the hards here. Must be a Group 3 car, wide body prohibited, nitrous and overtake prohibited, BOP is set to mid-speed, car used is a garage car or event specified, and car settings are partially allowed with brake balance. Now again, typical of Daily Race C, driver rating and safety rating is affected, mechanical damage is set to light, and the minimum number of pit stops is 1. Track limits are set to normal, shortcut penalty is light, wall collision penalty is off, other car collision penalty is on, and the same with pit lane cutting. So here we are then at Big Willow, perhaps my weakest track in the entirety of GT7. I just really struggle here. That final corner always throws me off because it is just so wide, so fast, and so awkward on the close-up at the final section that it always causes me to mess it up. So I didn't bother to qualify. We're starting P15 and I've set myself a target of getting inside the top 10. Now, of course, with this being Big Willow, it does lend itself to absolute carnage. There's no other way to put it. It's got huge runoff areas into the desert, and if you just so much as slightly catch your tyre on that sand, then you can guarantee you're probably going to be facing the wrong way in no time. So let's get things started, and straight away the Dodge Viper, incredibly quick off of the mark, it's going to get itself up the inside. I'm just going to kind of leave him to go through, and well, as you can see, he does get into P15. Now a lot of the cars up ahead, incredibly, you know, bumper car-ish, just bouncing off each other, putting a lot of pressure on each other. I'm expecting to get a few positions in absolutely no time. One thing I didn't expect though was to get such a good run on the Viper here, and in fact we put the car up the inside and then the Viper just decided to turn into us constantly. Luckily we did manage to keep it in a straight line and didn't end up spinning around, and we do get the move done back into P15 where we started. Now at this point we do have a Subaru BRZ right in front of us, and admittedly it was quite off the pace. Now again, with this being a Big Willow, I didn't want to end up kind of spinning him around or anything like that, but we did eventually get the move done. And in fact, because a lot of cars have gone off track or spun around, we're already up into P8 on lap 2, so we're well within our 10th place goal. And then things improve even more, overtaking a slow moving Honda NSX, so up into P7 and directly behind this Nissan GTR. So it was time to apply the pressure and see if we could get ourselves into P6, and it would come much easier than expected. For some reason the BMW absolutely incredible through this section, the GTR just roaming wide there and almost losing another position to the Subaru BRZ behind it. Anyway, P6 is ours, and well, it would be quite quickly a P5 as another GTR up in front had spun out. So there we go, we're inside the top 5 now. Now at this point the race would settle down, and this did allow me to find my pace, and eventually we would chip away at the gap to the Porsche in front. As you can see in P4 he's going to get it a little bit wrong, clipping the inside here and just losing a bit of that grip. Of course the hard tyres was starting to sort of drop off slightly now, and that did allow us an opening to get through and get into P4. Now by the time we pitted in at the end of lap 8 we're up in P3. However, the main reason for that is because the car in front of us did pit a lap early, but this should allow us to have better tyres at the end of the race and really charge on through the grid. Now I expected to leave the pit lane in maybe P5, P6 possibly, it just depends on which cars haven't pitted behind us just yet. The Porsche was one of them. Thankfully we do manage to come out the pit lane just in front of us with a clear track as well, and thankfully that allows us to chase down the BMW up in front. And in fact we found plenty of pace at this point in time that we were now the fastest car on track, chasing down the BMW and absolutely taking chunks of time out of his lead up there. So a podium position is possibly on. We managed to put the pressure on the BMW, getting right on the back of him with slipstream down the main straight, and in fact it's made even better by the Subaru BRZ there running wide. And well, we're going to try and do a bit of a dummy here. We're going to place the car up the inside and then just back out, but for some reason the BMW just gave us plenty of room to just keep the car up the inside. Couple that with a spinning Subaru BRZ and we managed to make 2 positions in a single corner, and we're now on the podium. And whilst the leader had had an incredibly clean race and we knew we couldn't win this one thing I did know for sure is that we could take a P2 here, chasing down this GTR which seemed to be struggling with grip at this point. We were absolutely ready to pounce if any mistakes were made, and they would be. On the 15th and final lap he's going to run wide into the right hander there, allow us up the inside, and thankfully allow us to pull away once again. The BMW being incredible on its tyre life throughout this entire race. Now all I need to do is just ensure that I maintain that position going into the final corner. Again, my weakest point of this track. Thankfully the GTR struggling too much with grip, and that allows us to confirm P2. So there we go, P15 to P2, starting towards the back of the grid. An incredible race, chaotic yes, but a huge amount of fun. And there we go, that is all of the daily races for this week, beginning August 4th, 2025. Now, of course, this series has been absent from the channel for about, I want to say maybe 2.5 years at this point, but seeing that Honda N1 race just really wanted to make me play sport mode for once. So here we go, who knows, if this does well enough, I might bring the series back. Thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you to all of my channel members on screen. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.